Welcome back to Gold and Black Live. I want to thank our sponsors, Triple X, on the hill, but on the level, the Purdue tradition since 1929. Hilton Garden Inn, when tomorrow's a big day. State HDI tonight, and State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. With Brian Neubert, working his way back from Minneapolis after the Boilermakers' 15-point win over the Golden Gophers. And Brian, I thought Purdue did I wouldn't say righted a lot of wrongs, but really took care of business in a good fashion against a Minnesota team that shot the ball very well and really gave Purdue a tussle for a lot of Wednesday night's game.
Yeah, there's probably not a whole lot of teams out there that wouldn't have found themselves in a much tougher game, than Purdue did last night, because it's freezing up here. It's a 6 o'clock start. Minnesota's not very good. Purdue didn't know if it was getting home last night. Minnesota shoots out of its mind for the majority of this game. If Purdue wasn't as good as Purdue is, especially offensively, this might have been like a 4-point game at the end, something like that. And then anything could have happened. But to Purdue's credit, they kind of absorbed a really inspired shooting performance by Minnesota. They were making tough threes. I mean, Peyton Willis was getting Eric Hunter on his back and ball screens and making Carson Edwards threes, stuff like that. And a lot of other nights against a lot of other teams, Minnesota might have won this game, but Purdue is just so good offensively that that really came to bear last night. If Purdue's got to outscore people sometimes, they're more than capable of doing that. That's obviously not your preferred way to win necessarily, but it was a pretty awesome offensive performance by Purdue last night. A little bit of everything.
Yeah, looking at the box score, what jumps out at you, one thing also is the play of Eric Hunter, and you've written about that, talked about that. Just seems to really be, not that he wasn't before, but enjoying playing. What did Gene Katie used to call him, a happy-go-lucky dolphin? I don't know what that has to do with anything, but Eric is really. I don't know what that means, but no, I mean he's been terrific and really making a difference offensively, but just I think also, as Matt Painter talked about, really from a leadership role. This is a guy that maybe is saving his best basketball for last, and that would be really helpful for Purdue as it makes this stretch drive.
Yeah, I just think he's given Purdue more commanding guard play lately. I think earlier in the season when, both Isaiah Thompson and Eric Hunter were kind of more game manager types. I don't mean that as a slight, but I thought the value Isaiah Thompson really brought, during the first half of the season, especially, was, Jaden Ivey was the team's dominant ball handler, and he still is. But I thought Isaiah Thompson gave Purdue a really nice complementary piece as like another spot up shooter next to a force of nature ball handler. But now Eric Hunter, the way he's emerged lately, he's giving Purdue some real dynamic guard play to a certain extent. The way Eric Hunter ran that fast break last night off the Zach Edey block, where he caved in Minnesota's defense in transition and then wheeled around and found Stefanovic following him. That's the sort of commanding guard play I'm talking about here. Really good decision making, giving you a little bit of scoring punch. I'm going to keep saying that Purdue's scoring goes through Jaden Ivey and the two big guys. Anybody else score, and Stefanovic. Anybody else who's scoring, that is gravy. And when your gravy guys give you 20 points off the bench or 18 points, I shouldn't have said off the bench because Eric Hunter started last night, but anytime your gravy guys give you 20 or 18 like Isaiah Thompson did at Iowa, that makes Purdue, really, really formidable.
Yeah, the big guys also continue to do the same thing. I mean, I don't know. I know there's analytics and data on just about everything, but Purdue did a great job of getting Minnesota into desperate foul trouble. That's been an MO throughout this. It's pretty much of the season with Edey and with Zach Edey and of course Travion Williams as well. Another good sign that, again, Purdue just doing what it has to do to execute its offense as the game gets going and drawing a lot of fouls.
Yeah, and Minnesota conceded it last night. They kind of they kind of saw the game for what it was going to be as opposed to what they wanted it to be. So they started Charlie the Devil went down to Georgia Daniels in at center, let him burn through his fouls right away, and then they brought in Eric Curry. I thought that was a really clever move by Ben Johnson, just to say, hey, there's not a whole lot we're going to be able to do about this. We're going to be pragmatic about it, and we're going to burn our fouls from the get-go. I'd rather pin them on our backup than our best guy. As it turned out, their best guy came in, got in foul trouble too, and was 1 of 7 from the floor. But there's just not a lot people can do against that size. Obviously, the production isn't always at a dominant level, but against opponents like this, who are, not as good defensively, not as physical, and are going to play you one-on-one in the post to start the game, Purdue's going to feast. And I thought Purdue feasted. I think it's so important for Purdue when Zach Edey gets them off the good starts. And he is uniquely positioned to have an outsized amount of that responsibility for Purdue, because they're going inside first, second, third. That's the tone they want to set for every game. And when Zach Edey starts games like he did last night, like he did, if I recall correctly, against Ohio State, good things really happen thereafter. But then Purdue at the end of the game goes to Travion Williams, and Travion Williams does what he's done so many times in his career, where he has those 4 possessions where he gets you 2 buckets himself, but then assists on a dunk and assists on a 3-pointer. He was really Purdue's closer. Zach Edey was the opener, and Travion Williams was the closer. That is a really unique kind of dynamic Purdue has going here.
Yeah, no question.
Both of those guys did such good jobs as passers too last night. I think that's a really important part of this too, is that especially against that zone when Purdue wanted to play inside out, both of those guys did a really good job caving in the defense and then kicking right back out to shooters. And when you're surrounded by shooters and you have big guys who can do that, because Travion Williams is a savant of a passer, and all Zach Edey has to do is hold the ball over his head, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. That's another really, really unique dynamic this team has.
As the season moves into February, Caleb Furst also hit a couple big baskets at the right time to underneath to kind of stem the Minnesota run. It was a game, as Purdue's games tend to be, games of runs. But again, talk about that progress and the fact that he's a guy that may only get, as Matt Painter always says after the games, may get 6 minutes, may get 9 minutes, may get 15, whatever he gets. But again, I think his progress was very, very important to Purdue's relatively easy win on Wednesday night.
Yeah. If somebody asks you on the street who made the biggest shot of the game last night, you probably would say Eric Hunter. You probably would say Sasha Stefanovic. You probably would say Jaden Ivey. You might say Zach Edey or Travion Williams. And on all 5 of those answers, you'd probably be wrong, because I thought that Purdue had missed like 7 shots in a row or something like that. And they were Minnesota was chipping away a little bit. And Caleb Furst comes in and gets 2 garbage buckets. He scores off an inbound, and then he scores off a putback. And as I always say with Caleb Furst, and this sort of applies to Mason Gillis too, is that when you try really hard and you have some ability, productivity finds you. And I think that's the best way I can sum up Caleb Furst. And that's what kind of happened last night for him, is that you don't have to run offense necessarily for him. He doesn't have to get clean looks or whatever it is. He just kind of finds ways. And this season for him is just about fitting in alongside, stars on a great team. Next year, Purdue needs him to become one of its best players. And I think he's going to be very positioned to do that. I think what you're seeing from Caleb Furst right now is a fraction of what you're going to see from him in the future. Obviously, he's shown everyone he can shoot threes. He's shown everyone he can rebound. He's shown everybody he can run the floor. Next year, you're going to see his passing. Next year, you're going to see him Purdue play through him in the post a little bit. I think he can maybe replace or fit into some of what Purdue does with Travion Williams now, where he can run offense through him at the elbow, in the high post, stuff like that, some of the dribble handoff stuff away from the basket. He's a really big part of Purdue's future. And don't look at him right now as the guy who's playing 13 minutes and 54 seconds at Minnesota. Look at him as a guy who's going to be one of Purdue's best players right now, or going to be one of Purdue's best players next season, probably, but is just filling a very specific role right now.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point, and he is certainly doing that and doing it. Coming back after COVID seems to be, he has his legs under him and getting it done. All right, Michigan on Saturday. The city, the area digging out from one of the biggest snowstorm in at least 15 years, and yet the Wolverines will be coming in and limping maybe, but they certainly showed at Indiana that they could put a hurt on somebody, beating the Hoosiers by 18 in Assembly Hall, something Purdue couldn't do. Going to be an interesting week because you have Michigan on Saturday, then you have Illinois. Will be another tough game on Tuesday, and then you turn right around and go to Michigan the following Thursday. What do you see about the Wolverines, and maybe what might be a unique challenge or two for Purdue as they face the Wolverines in Mackey at 2:30 on Saturday?
Yeah, isn't it crazy that I came to Minneapolis to get away from the snow?
I know. You did.
Provided Michigan can get to West Lafayette, and I don't have any reason to think they won't be able to. They're obviously.
I think they will. Yeah.
I think their COVID episode bought them time to figure some things out, which is a huge break for them. I think it was a little bit of a tough deal for Purdue from a scheduling perspective to cram the other game back into this thing, because now you're in this 4 games in 8 days, whatever it is, span. So that whole thing didn't work out well for Purdue. I think it did work out well for Michigan. That's the nature of continuing to play college basketball in a pandemic. I don't think anybody's going to complain about that. But I think when you look at what Michigan did at Indiana, Hunter Dickinson was awesome in that game. Hunter Dickinson's a great player. He's got a lot of young kids around him, and that team hasn't quite clicked all season long. But I suspect that game was probably more about Indiana than it was Michigan, because I'm guessing Indiana beat Purdue and then really painted the town red thereafter and, spent 36 hours being told how awesome they were and, stuff like that. And then the result was what it was. Now, to Indiana's credit, they've come back and played pretty well after that. But Michigan just has gotten better from what they were a few weeks ago. Had Purdue gone to Michigan when it was supposed to go to Michigan, had Michigan State gone to Michigan when, or had that Michigan State-Michigan game been played when it was supposed to be played, that they were in a tough spot then. But I think they've kind of gotten a little bit better with time here. These aren't going to be easy games, especially the game in Ann Arbor, but I think Michigan just hasn't quite worked for them this year. It's hard in the Big Ten to be young, and they're really young. They're really talented, but they're really young.
Yeah.
They're in a little bit of a similar situation with Purdue. Well, I take that back completely, but their roster construction is a little bit similar to Purdue last year. But it just hasn't clicked for them yet. And, they're not the most skilled team in the Big Ten. Talented, yes. Skilled, no. They haven't been able to. They're not a great shooting team. I don't think Hunter Dickinson has quite enough help. I think Dickinson obviously is going to have his hands full with Edey and Travion Williams, but they're going to have their hands full with him too. And that's going to be a really fun matchup to watch. But, Purdue's going to be the favorite here. I think these were games that prior to the season, people would have marked these on their calendar and said, these games are where the Big Ten championship is decided. It's not going to be that way because Michigan, while they're not completely out of it, they're not the elite team that everybody, figured they would be this season. But Purdue's got to play well. I mean, that's if Purdue plays well, Purdue's going to win every game the rest of the season, probably, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think that's it. As we handicap the Big Ten race, and of course, Illinois beats Wisconsin relatively handily in the second half on Wednesday night. I agree with you. I think Purdue's really it's not going to be easy as Purdue, if Purdue can hold serve, win these games that we're talking about during these gauntlet of games, but you still have to go to Wisconsin and Michigan State at the end of the month. And that will be end of the month and first of next month, I should say. And that will be a challenge for the Boilermakers. All right, Brian, we're going to let you get your way back to West Lafayette. We'll look forward to your coverage after the Purdue-Michigan game on Saturday. And we'll also stay tuned. We'll be back in a couple minutes for our next segment on Golden Black Live.